Okay, so we're on Facebook, Chris. That's good. Wow, this is great. Nice group of folks. Okay. Is Commissioner Meieran with us? We will. Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Reynolds, and I'm an Oregon State Representative for Oregon House District 36, which covers much of Portland's west side. You're tuning into a follow-up to a Houselessness in Portland Town Hall, which was held back in May with me, with City Commissioner Dan Ryan, with County Commissioner Sharon Meieran. At that event, we also had some members of the houseless community along with Kaya Sand of Street Roots. We talked then about coming back in 6 months to do a follow-up. And so we're here for that tonight. We are on Facebook Live and I think YouTube, and we're recording this. I do want to, before we get started, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement, because we acknowledge that the land that we occupy as residents is unceded Indigenous land. The Portland metro area rests on traditional village sites of the Multnomah, the Wasco, the Cowlitz, the Cathlamet, the Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kaiapua, Malala, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River, creating both permanent communities and seasonal encampments. And there are many other tribes and nations who traditionally lived, hunted, and fished in what is now Multnomah County in Oregon that are not collectively remembered. But we want to take this moment to remember their contributions in shaping the world we live in today. I am going to give we are not going to delve into the causes of homelessness. We did that actually quite a bit back in May. I'm going to give just a brief summary of what we discussed in May, which is that, we talk about close to 2,000 unsheltered, houseless on the streets in Portland. We'll be doing another point in time count in January, if I'm not mistaken, to get a better feel of those numbers. This is for people who cannot make their rent, but it's also the chronically homeless who have significant mental illness, substance use disorder, other disabilities. There are a lot of different ways to approach solutions to this problem, including, I wrote housing, right? Our housing in Portland is really incredibly too expensive for the average working family. The goal should be that a person's housing costs are less than 30% of their rent, and that's very difficult to achieve in Portland. There are many agencies and programs at various levels: city, county, state, private organizations, community-based organizations, nonprofits, who are working on this. And we are here tonight to follow up on some of the things that we discussed back in May. One thing that, well, I'm just going to turn it over to without further ado, I'm going to turn this event tonight over to City Commissioner Dan Ryan, who's been on the front lines of this. I will remind folks that back in May, we were just getting used to this. We were just being introduced to this idea of what we're calling safe rest villages, which is kind of an in-between step for our neighbors who are living in tents on sidewalks and people who've reached what we're all hoping to provide, which is permanent housing with wraparound services. So, as Commissioner Ryan and Meieran, it just is coincidental that they kind of rhyme, had talked about, is we need a spectrum of options for people. One of the most compelling, I think a lot of us found, was the safe rest villages. So for an update and whatever else you want to talk about, Commissioner Ryan, not Meieran, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Okay, well, excuse me. Thank you so much, Representative Reynolds. And I see that Commissioner Meieran has joined us. So hello, Commissioner Meieran. And hello, all of you engaged, enthusiastic Portlanders who I know have a lot of compassion in their heart for this issue. Thank you for inviting me to participate this evening. If you could go to the next slide. Or is the slide up? Sorry, it's not up. That's pretty, but that's not my slide. You know. Where is that? I think that's the end of the slide deck. This is good. Okay, now go to the next slide. Thanks. Am I, okay, got it. All right. So, you know, I think it's really important to always start these in addition to the land acknowledgement. It's really good to continue to stay centered in why we're here. And what I've noticed is how we have a lot of fatigue in our community at the moment. There's COVID fatigue is definitely very real, compassion fatigue in general. And I just want to acknowledge that collective challenge. I think a lot of us experience that like never before in our community. And so the challenges related to living unsheltered in Portland right now is also very real. So this impact of houselessness on our environment, on our economy, on community safety, it's everyone is feeling it. And there's a lot of impatience because we didn't get here overnight. And everyone wants action today. And that's what we're going to lean into tonight is how can we accept these shared challenges with some radical compassion as we really focus on some harm reduction and starting to get some real tangible results. This is messy work right now. There's no getting around it. And sometimes I think in my great state of Oregon, where I was born and raised and in Portland, we can get a little into the perfection to the point where we let that get in the way of the good. And so I think it's okay for us to start testing, start innovating, start doing some real action and keep learning and moving on from those experiences. So I just wanted to start off with some level setting that all of us are experiencing the pressure and also at the same time, the fatigue that's out there in the community. Next slide. So the Safe Rest Villages are one tool in the toolbox that we really needed. And I know that for me, it was always that the on-ramp from those who are living on our streets, especially those that are chronically houseless, those that have been houseless for more than 2 years, collectively have at least many times a couple diagnoses of dual diagnosis of mental health and behavioral health. There's a lot of chicken and egg on that one. And sometimes also on top of that, medical diagnosis. One could say that this usually accelerates when someone is houseless for more than 2 years. I did set an ambitious goal after we achieved some success to land the Safe Rest Villages as a policy that was approved 5-0 on the last day of June by the City Council. The goal is to get these done, acting with urgency to serve some of these most vulnerable people in our community. I was proud that the Safe Rest Village team, the money for that from the ARPA dollars from the federal government was approved in July. And then we were able to get a team up and running in September. That team is led by Charity Montez, our House of Strategies manager. She's here tonight in the Q&A. You'll probably hear some answers directly from Charity. Community engagement coordinators, including Jake Dornblasher is here tonight. And the other team members are those that are working with constituents, those in the ground, in the community, site development projects manager, and a grants analysis. All of those positions have now been filled, which is pretty quick for us. So for any organization, but especially in government. So I'm really proud how quickly we actually are moving. I probably got a little ahead of my skis when I thought these could be up at the end of the year. I tend to be like that, and I'm okay with setting those kind of goals so it can get people moving. I will be the first to say moving work and big bureaucracies is I have more empathy than ever for many people that have told me it's hard to get work done quickly at the city. And boy, do I understand that now. But we are making some headway. The community engagement with housed and unhoused neighbors, neighborhood associations, nonprofits that work in the neighborhoods. After we find a site, then we start that process. We start hearing community concerns and addressing those. at each one. And we definitely will have some open in early 2022. And the project management team at this moment is purchasing, getting permits. We're learning more about the supply chain challenges that you probably read about or heard about in the news. And we also took on another assignment, the C3PO camps, if you will. We're transforming them into villages. They're the ones that are in Old Town and on Water Avenue. And so our office got that assignment from the mayor around the same time that these that we made the Safe Rest Village push. So in all actuality, that's another capacity concern that we've had to move through. And I really want to thank Charity and the team for transforming, for example, the one on Weidler. It has 24/7 supervision. It has a lovely fence. It's really creating that restorative environment that we need in a village that I think was lacking in some of the C3PO emergency shelters that we opened very quickly. We realized there was going to be community pushback no matter where we go. And we also know there's a lot of compassion fatigue, again, with such pushback. And we welcome that. It's important for Portlanders to be heard at this time. No one expected our city to be in this situation, and yet here we are. So I will say that this has helped, I think, a lot of us get out of the denial and moving towards action. Let's go to the next slide. You know, the fact that we're citing these villages is one thing, but I think it's important to just look how far we've come in the last, since 2015, since we declared an emergency when it comes to houselessness. This map shows all types of shelters that the city and the county have put together. The Safe Rest villages are in blue. So the Menlo Park and Ride is on 122nd and Burnside. Thank you, TriMet, for being our partner on that. We have one now sited at the 23rd 100 Southwest NATO Parkway block, and that's a combination with the Parking Bureau, or the Housing Bureau, not the Housing Bureau, with the department ODOT and PBOT, getting my acronyms messed up. And those are the transportation units of the city and the state. And then the one that was just announced recently, Sears Armory parking lot, which is in Multnomah Village. And anyway, we're excited that we have these three, and we'll have a couple others that we hope to announce fairly soon. But I wanted to just make you all just have you look at the map and notice that we went from having everything kind of centralized downtown to, over the last 6 years, expanding the reach so that we are meeting more of our houseless residents where they have been living. And that's been very helpful. And it's something that the county and the city has been focused on for quite some time. So this is just adding to that. Let's go to the next slide. This is kind of like a stick figure of a human being. So it's obviously not an artist rendering of what they look like, but it's important to just know that we have some standard services and they will be prioritized with all of our villages. First and foremost, this isn't an unstructured or unsupervised camp. This is a restorative village, and it has 24/7 supervision. It'll have a fence around it. We want the people who live there to actually have that opportunity to feel safe and to start to have connection with the other villagers that live inside. And so they will all be experiencing some amenities. And if you go to the next slide, we just kind of spell out those amenities. So we have infrastructure with electricity, clean water. We have a shared kitchen. We have hygiene with laundry and showers. And this is also important, but the thing that I'm probably most excited about is the innovation that this is providing. I know we're starting to get more investments. Thank you, Representative Reynolds from Salem. And boy, do we need it in a state that's pretty much rock bottom on both behavioral health and mental health. But to bring those services to where the people are on the ground. We can't wait for bricks and mortar facilities to be built. We have to start this now because we're in this crisis. So having case management, mental health supports and behavioral health supports coming to the villages where we can start to get to know people by name. So they're getting connection time with one another in the village. And more importantly, they're being connected to services. So when they do move into housing, there's going to be a much better success rate. And we will track that with data. But I wanted to let you know that this is why there was a focus on this, taking people from the streets with multiple diagnoses and conditions and moving them into a studio or a one-bedroom apartment is a really rough transition. It's pretty extreme. And so we had a lot of houseless people that were not doing that well once they moved into their apartment. And so this is part of that 3 to 6 month restorative process to build their resilience. And when they move into permanent housing, I think we're going to see much better results. Next slide. Something that I think all of us should be really proud of, and I hope you noticed, the city and the county hasn't always been on the same page, always been aligned with how we're investing in our houseless work. And so it was really refreshing to experience what we did this fall when we both had some extra revenues that we weren't expecting. We all took a pause together and worked to streamline our investments. And with that, you're going to see up to 400 new shelter beds, an additional 20 to 25 positions for navigation outreach workers. This is so key to start to build those relationships while people unhoused are on the ground. So we have a better on-ramp to even get them into the villages, for example. We're going to target certain areas, especially Old Town and other high impact locations such as Lentz. Expanded behavioral health services will include teams in, again, Chinatown. And this package also will build a successful county behavioral health pilot project. And we're looking forward to adding teams to that. Funding a pretty expansive expansion of storage and hygiene services throughout the market. And also we're expanding staffing and resources for cleanups. So Solve, Central City Concerns, Clean Start will help the city's impact reduction team start to really dig out from much of the COVID guidelines, which kept us from doing that for some time when the outbreak of the pandemic first took place. So we're very thrilled with these aligned investments. We are resourced today like never before to get to the bottom of this challenge. And so those are my introductory comments. And I just wanted to say it's great to be here. I look forward to the Q&A. And I think it's time to turn it back to you, Representative Reynolds.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think it's worth, I did get a question. This is weird. I'm looking at a funny empty room. So sorry. I think that it's worth, since I have you here, that someone acknowledged that, yes, there are more shelters, but the homeless problem is worse than ever. And I wonder if you can speak to that, Commissioner Ryan. I don't mean to, I think we all have noticed that the homeless problem is worse than ever, and also more work is being done to try to solve the problem.
Yeah, I've been in office about 14 months. I know you're fairly new as well, Representative Reynolds, and I think anyone that is in service to our community right now has to be ready to roll up their sleeves and just go for it and get to the bottom of this challenge. But we definitely have, it's very important that we focus on housing. And why we're on this topic, I need to make it really clear that for probably 20 years, we were noticing that Portland had become just out of reach for so long. That recording is really lovely. So the fact is we became unaffordable to so many people who are working class. So we really have to keep expanding affordable units. And from 2015 to today, we have 3,400 more affordable units serving 6,000 people. But more importantly, we have about 3,000 in development at this time. And so the expansion of the Metro Bond now on top of the Portland Housing Bond, we're focusing more and more on them that have services that wrap around, which are really needed. So I think what you're experiencing right now is there are more services that are going to be up and running soon. At the same time, we've had a big increase in people that are clearly on our streets. I look forward to getting real-time data. That's why I pushed really hard. My first phone call when I got in was to work with Built for Zero. It took about 6 months to get everybody on the same page to sign the contract. But we need to have a data-driven culture that is comfortable with exactly what the real need is. And then we can start to measure what is the success rate of someone going from the streets into the Safe Rest Village and then into a permanent housing. And so I think that we've been missing out on that kind of concrete data that is also transparent for the whole community to see. So we're at a point where the community has given us a lot of investments with Here Together and the housing bonds. And now government and the nonprofit partners are in a place to be resourced to get some work done and to get some real results. So I'm just hoping that yes, we're seeing that, and yes, we're experiencing it on a deeper level than ever before. And I think the state has to acknowledge how horrific it is and how embarrassing it is for the great state of Oregon to have one of the worst safety nets in the country when it comes to behavioral health and mental health. And instead of blaming like the state or the federal government or local, how are we going to all work together collectively to just stay focused on solution? And so I'm hoping that the fatigue that we're all experiencing with the grim conditions on the streets is also a call for all of us to have some shared sacrifice and shared opportunity to really be a part of the solution. So I know that's where I'm going to stay focused. I know that's where you're focused, Representative Reynolds. And I think elected officials today, if you want to run for office and look good while you're trying to do this, good luck. It's more about us being good on a daily basis to do all we can to be as authentic as possible, to be straight up with all of you about how important it is for Portland and the whole state to come together and make this our number one issue. And hopefully in 10 years' time, things will look so much better and we'll be able to be a shining story for everybody in the country to see how we came together to solve this. But yeah, it's pretty overwhelming right now.
Yeah, and I think the 10-year timeline is probably a realistic one, as hard as that is to stomach, because I do think this has been 20 to 30 years in the making. As someone,
oh yeah, I mean, it started when a certain president, decided to dismantle a lot of the mental health system. And I think a lot of states have suffered to figure out how to build their own safety net. And I think we're definitely at a place where Oregon can't be in denial anymore that it's time for us to take that action and make this a high priority. So those of you who are excited about the gubernatorial race, do ask those questions.
Great point. So we've just spent quite a bit of time talking about the city perspective, and we could probably have a 6-hour town hall tonight, but I'm trying to focus on the updates on where we've come since May. I'm going to turn it over to Multnomah County Commissioner Sharon Meieran, who's going to talk about what's come online for Multnomah County since we spoke in May. I've actually spoken to her since then, but we spoke as a collective group in May.
Hello. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me? Okay. My husband from the other room said, yes, I'm seeing thumbs up. That's great. I had to move because my computer just went out in the other room. So it's great to see all of you here today, and I'm just gonna jump in because I know time is limited and your questions are really the most important thing. So when last we met, the county was in the process of adopting our fiscal year 2022 budget. I had made a particular proposal that I had talked about a bit at the town hall, and it was a continuum of sort of alternative shelters that would be distributed throughout the county, that would be sort of what I called harm reduction, or an improvement in the living conditions, improvement in safety and health for hundreds of people living unsheltered on our streets. It was a continuum that included some small sort of micro villages that are scattered all over the county in different neighborhoods, safe parking sites, and a few of the larger structured sites, which are sort of the safe rest village concept that Commissioner Ryan has been talking about. Next slide, please. And we did end up adopting a budget that, to my dismay, did not include that array of potential options for shelter, but did adopt some goals of additional supportive housing, up to 400 shelter beds, some expanded behavioral health outreach and some navigation teams going out to talk to people living outside, some hygiene services, and requests for community members to submit ideas for alternative shelter. And all in all, with our underlying base budget, with the additional funds that we receive from the Metro Supportive Housing Services measure and from some of the COVID relief funds that we received, we budgeted for $150 million to be spent on homelessness. Next slide, please. In addition, and Commissioner Ryan referred to this as well, we had an unexpected surplus in business income tax revenue, and that ended up being close to $40 million just at the county alone. And we spent about 30 million of that on homeless services. And that was the work where the chair got together with Commissioner Ryan and the mayor, and they had considered some ways that we could invest those resources in homelessness. And then that was brought to the commissioners, and we voted, the commission voted to support a package of services, again, to go toward housing and homelessness. And to be upfront, there was a significant portion of this that I personally did not vote in favor of, because I did not feel that this is actually, that we had the time to actually think about how to make these investments holistically. And I don't necessarily feel that these investments are going to make the impact that we could be seeing with a $40 million investment. But here is the list. It's sort of written out here of what the county portion of this was invested in. And some of this is really great. Particularly, we are purchasing some facilities that can be used both as shelter, but then ideally refurbished and repurposed to be potentially single room occupancy units or supportive housing units or that kind of thing. Next slide. And so, my sort of takeaways from the whole way that we are thinking about addressing housing and homelessness, and which I don't honestly see enough. And when I say us, I mean myself included, but collectively local government and the boards and agencies that are making these decisions. But I just heard, I've been thinking how to express this, but the phrase begin with the end in mind. We need to know where we want to go in order to be able to get there. And that's something that it has been challenging to see how we are planning for where we want to be. And I really appreciate Commissioner Ryan sort of elevating an organization called Community Solutions and a model called Built for Zero that many of you here may have heard of. If not, I would Google it because it's really great. And it's a way to think of where do we want to get in terms of people living outside unsheltered on our streets? And that would be, we want to get to zero. So why don't we start with that goal? Then we can develop the strategies to get us there. And then we can assess along the way, set ourselves a timeline, and then make that impact. And we know if we're going the right direction, we know if what we're doing is working in real time, and we can be transparent about the data that we have and be accountable so that the public can see in a public-facing dashboard exactly what we are doing at what point in time. So I believe we need to be doing this, yesterday, but we have now adopted it and are working toward getting there. We also, you may have seen that there was an auditor's report that came out that was just the initial report, and Auditor McGuirk is going to be delving deeper. But there are some significant discrepancies in how we collect data and what we think we're measuring. And that's been something that has been, it is something that is out there. It is something that I've been concerned about in terms of what data we're collecting, how we are measuring success, all of that for quite a while. And I am very glad that the auditor will be doing a deeper dive, because if we're not collecting the right data, if we don't have quality control and know what we're collecting, so someone can say, hey, wait, that doesn't even make sense. For example, how are we housing this many people when we only started out? Something doesn't add up. So we need to be able to account for that data. And we also have a board, a coalition called A Home for Everyone, that started as a really great concept of bringing people together, organizations, nonprofits, people doing frontline work, people, advocates, people with lived experience of being houseless, to come together to work on what the recommendations should be to the joint office and to the county board of commissioners and to the city in terms of homeless policy, how we should allocate our limited resources to make a difference. And this was in 2014, 2016 or so, when this coalition started. A great idea, but it has turned out that the way it's been implemented has actually been limiting. It has not been as inclusive as it should. It has not provided a streamlined mechanism to get advice and information and input from all different sectors, so that we can put all of it together to make informed decisions. And so I've been pushing for changing that structure, and we're working on it right now so that we have that mechanism that can have, again, appropriate oversight. And then my final question in this context is, we ask, how do you solve homelessness? And people say, well, we solve homelessness by providing housing. Okay, well, and then the arguments could be made like that, anything we invest in shelter is not investing in permanent housing. It's created this sort of tension, which I think is a false tension, but it exists in allocating our resources. But I believe that we need to be asking a very different question in addition, which is, what is the baseline we accept for people, the standard we accept for people living in our community? And how do we reduce harm for people living below that standard? How do we get up to a baseline? Because to make the housing is the solution for homelessness, to be talking about some of those questions, we're assuming we're at an okay standard right now, and I just do not accept that. And so all the things we are talking about in our investments, they're talking about investing in hundreds of units, in hundreds of shelter beds and this and that. Right now, and you can actually change to the next slide, we have an estimate. Whenever the slide comes up, we have an estimate of about minimum 5,000 people living outside on our streets. We don't know the exact number because we haven't counted in 3 years. Our counts have been inaccurate at baseline. There's sort of a HUD compliance requirement that we need to do these counts to get some funding. But there's snapshots in time where you sort of go out on a couple of days a year. We are going to do it in January, but we skipped it this past year to say, how many people are there? And, it's always been a low number, low estimate, conservative estimate, but there's a by name list, which is the concept of a comprehensive list of every person experiencing homelessness that's updated in real time. This is a best practice. This should have been done for years. It has not been. Finally, working with Community Solutions, we are going to engage in that process. And we need to do it as soon as possible, because we don't need to only know how many people are living outside. We need to know who they are, what their issues are, so we can tailor our responses to meet specific needs. So we may need 800 supportive housing beds. We may not. We may, employment services may not. We need to know this. So that is work that should be underway. And then next slide, I'm almost done. I'm gonna totally shift gears and go to a couple of points of light. I think of them as not 1,000 points of light, but just 2 points of light. One of them is called BHECN. It's BHECN, of course, an acronym, stands for Behavioral Health Emergency Coordination Network. This is acknowledging, as Commissioner Ryan alluded to, that so many of the people living on our streets outside are suffering from behavioral health conditions, severe mental illness, substance use disorder, and one of the biggest dangers in our society that we don't talk about very much, which is methamphetamine. It is beginning to overwhelm what is happening on our streets. It causes violent behavior, and it brings on psychosis. There's a lot of very bad stuff associated with methamphetamine, and we need to get a handle on that. But one of the things we are doing is a really significant collaborative group has gotten together to work on opening this facility. And it's going to be a single point of access to triage, evaluate, stabilize, and do the appropriate referral for people having behavioral health crises. It replaces the sobering center, but adding in, what can we do for methamphetamine? We need to be on the cutting edge there. Where do people go? What is that trajectory? And this can put people on a different trajectory so that people aren't just going to jail or the ER, where I see them as an ER doctor over and over and over again. So I'm very excited about this process. It's underway. The facility hopefully will be opening probably early 2023, but there's a great model in Pima County. Went there with a delegation from Oregon just last week, and I'm very encouraged. So this is hugely important. Last slide. And the other element, another sort of missing link in our continuum, is a behavioral health resource center. And I saw Kevin Fitz is one of the participants here today. I just want to call him out. He is a person who does so much work in the consumer movement, and people who have experienced mental health issues themselves, our peers, support the community, advise policymakers and decision makers on what they should do. An incredible force for good. And he has advocated for peer respite centers, places people can go, they're living outside, don't have a place to be, that they can be. And, think about it. If you're living outside at all, where do you go during the day? So the county is invested in a building that there's a bunch of legislators and all sorts of other people at this building that's being built, converted, that will contain a respite center with access to all kinds of services if people want them, peers they can talk to, or just get a cup of coffee. There'll be a floor that is shelter that has people experienced in providing behavioral health services. So really dedicated folks that can deal with some of the issues that might come up. And then bridge housing, so people coming out of jail or the state hospital or another institutional setting can stabilize and have a place to be for months while they get into work to get into supportive housing or whatever other housing they need. So this is a huge bridge. This and the coordination network are huge deficits in our continuum and can make a big difference in terms of that behavioral health component. Anyway, that's it for me, but I really look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Meieran. It is nice to see the points light. I'll have you know, I've been messaging with Kevin Fitz. He was happy. He was instrumental in a lot of this work. So it's obviously always great to have him here. A couple things in terms of questions that have come up. There certainly continues to be a lot of interest in safe rest villages. And I know that Jake put a link into kind of the webpage that explains some things. And I told Commissioner Ryan before we got started, I do think, the recent coverage on where y'all are on getting things up and running has been really, really welcome. Because I think for a while it felt like there are a lot of, unfortunately, like one step up, two step back. And it feels that it feels like we are going several steps forward. And I just wonder we could spend an hour just on the safe rest villages, but if you guys could lay out the timeline. And I've also we've received several questions in particular on the Sears Armory site, which is actually, I think, in my district, or it's very close to my district. I apologize. I think I'm a little bit north of there. About issues of safety around these safe rest villages. So this comes into the community concerns about this. So I will turn that over to one of you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. And Charity Montez is here to provide some more context. So first of all, just know even finding a partner that was willing to lend the land, if you will, and lean in with the city in this shared responsibility time has been quite a journey. And I'm really thrilled that that's gradually growing. I think that one of the biggest challenges for people right now in general is what they see when they drive around town is an unprecedented number of camps that have formed, and they create their own community, whether we like what that community looks like, whether we like it or not. That is what's happening, and that's what's been happening for some time. And so I think there's been this perception that the safe rest villages are taking the current camps that have organically shown up all over the place, and we're just moving them into one spot. So there's a reason they're called villages. There's a reason why we have 24/7 supervision. There's a reason why we will have a fence around it for safety. There's a reason why we put investments in place to increase the impact reduction team's work, to also benefit those around the village, both the neighbors that are housed, but also very important for those that are in the village. We see this as a restorative process for them to have an access point. Although it's a low barrier entry point, there will be access to services and encouragement for that. And so I know from lived experience, when you're doing behavioral health therapy work, when you're doing treatment work, the last thing you need is to walk outside of your home and be triggered by those that you've used with, for example. And so it's really was a big deal when the city and the county increased those investments that we will put in place surrounding the villages. In terms of some of the concerns about criminal history of those who could be in the village, if an individual's criminal history precludes them from being within a certain distance of a school, they wouldn't be allowed to live at the shelter, for example, the one in Multnomah Village, just as they wouldn't be allowed to live in a nearby apartment or house. Parole and probation officers enforce supervision teams that set those boundaries just as they do throughout our community. So we will be in conjunction with that. I also want to point to how important it is that we've increased the investment in the number of outreach workers. It takes a while to connect with someone on the street, to build some trust, to even engage them in services. So I love that the city and the county really worked hard to come up with those investments as well. If you're satisfied with the way things are currently going on the streets with unsupervised camping with zero supervision, then why would you want a safe rest village in your neighborhood? You could just continue to have what the status quo has been currently producing all over the city. So this is a step in the right direction. There are unhoused camps all over the city. And so it's very important that we offer services throughout the city. And so you will continue to see us focusing on the criteria that does have a really fair geographic distribution. Charity and her team work so extensively with the community once they're sited. I'll give an example of an area where we haven't been working as extensively because the Portland Public School District, we were connecting with them, looking into, is there any land that they could offer for this effort, this all-in effort that every jurisdiction is being asked to be a part of right now. And one that rose to the top was where former Adams High School, former Whitaker Middle School is. That property has been vacant for some time. And we're only accessing the part of that property that we were looking to, the part of the property that was zoned for commercial usage. And so we're just barely 2 days into the conversation whether this would be something that PPS would want to sign in for, and then it was leaked to the media, and a lot of people had, grave concerns. That's in the court of Portland Public Schools. They will decide whether they want to be a partner or not. That's in a committee, a facilities committee, and that will be taken. They'll be taking a vote on that, I think, in January. So that's an area where we're not focusing at this moment. We're looking at the 3 sites that we've cited and a couple others where we're trying to pencil it out. But I just want to really acknowledge how hard the Safe Rest Village team is working to dispel a lot of myths and to continue to notice how many people, when we can do dialogue and when we all want what's best for Portland, and we realize this is just one part of the solution that is desperately needed. But I just want to acknowledge that. And I'm going to turn it over to Charity because I know there's probably a couple of points you'd like to add.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to say that safety for the participants, the shelter residents, is also a primary concern for us. And so our team is doing a lot of community engagement with the neighbors, and we will be working with our shelter operators once those are identified at each of the sites, and continue doing that community engagement and talking through very specific safety and security concerns with the neighbors and the shelter operators together to make sure that it is a safe environment for the participants and the housed neighbors.
Great, thank you. And I will say that we're all, I think, fielding a lot of different questions here. Okay, great. One thing and again, we could talk for hours on Safe Rest Villages. And I don't know, did I hear the timeline? And I'm so sorry because I was trying to help someone. I'm multitasking, which I shouldn't be doing. Do you guys have a timeline for the 6 to 7 sites that are coming online? And it's okay if I know I've been hearing spring, but I know that
he is unable to unmute right now. If somebody can help him, he doesn't have access to the mute.
There, thank you. I don't know who the gods are, but I'm glad you finally let me unmute. The timeline is we're going to get these built, and they're going to be built as soon as possible, and we will have some up and running in early 2022.
Great, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Good. And I do want to highlight what Commissioner Meieran touched on, and this is certainly something that has been getting a lot of press about, the metrics of not knowing what the numbers are and, getting to that end in mind. And I would just say, I would encourage all of us to be tracking these numbers and sharing these numbers. I think we all feel better, as I'm putting myself in the shoes of the general public, because I feel a little bit like a member of the general public in this arena, that the more we hear, the more we understand, the more where we know on the track, the better. And I will just share the part I'm doing as a state rep, which I will acknowledge is easier than the parts you guys are doing. I do acknowledge that, is that, we're having a special session on Monday in order to extend the eviction moratorium so that we don't have 10,000 Oregonians removed from their apartments over the next several weeks, in the middle of winter and the holidays. And this is because we have plenty of state and federal dollars. Maybe I shouldn't say plenty. We have many state and federal dollars working their way through the system to get to those renters and landlords. And we don't want people to be evicted as that money makes its way. One of our guests pointed out that the Build Back Better Act includes quite a bit of money for affordable housing. That would be another positive infusion for those for affordable housing. I will just note that I was in Chicago visiting my kids over Thanksgiving, and I was shocked at how much less expensive and very desirable neighborhoods of Chicago the housing costs are in Chicago than Portland. It really was a wake-up call for me. So not that I didn't believe that housing is extremely expensive in Portland, but it was pretty humbling to see that. We do have a guest I would like to join in to talk about a kind of a public-private partnership called Home Share. Tess Fields, are you able to give us a few minutes of description of your group's program? And we have to ask, I'm out. Okay. Yes, you're unmuted. Your camera is.
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, yes, thanks for having me. And I really appreciate all the work that everybody has been doing for so many years on this issue. And I think that, what is worth repeating is that we didn't get here overnight. And there's a lot of factors that have come into play that have, I think, brought us to the place that we're now in. When we took a look at the housing crisis and the consistent increase in numbers of folks that were on the streets, we were trying to figure out what piece of the puzzle was missing. And for us, what came back for us is we didn't, in spite of everything, at the end of the day, there's not enough affordable housing in Portland. So if you're looking at a situation where the average apartment is $1,700, one bedroom, one bath apartment is $1,700 a month now, then median income people can't afford housing. So what we did is we took a look at the Oregon census and learned that there's 1.5 million owner occupied homes across the state that have a spare bedroom. And so we took a step further and said, what could we, if we could just incentivize just 2% of that population to actually rent that spare bedroom out, we could house 30,000 people affordably without building any new infrastructure, or, you've got your fire stations and your utilities and your sewers and everything else is already built. So we did a little bit more research and deduced and started to try to figure out what was the biggest impediment to people actually renting spare bedrooms. Spare bedrooms are typically, over half the cost of what a one bedroom, one bath apartment is. And so I think that, sorry, I got distracted for just a second with a message, but I think that, so once we took a look at that, we basically found some research that was conducted by University of Washington last year and commissioned by the Washington legislature, and learned that the biggest impediment to home sharing is that it's not the cultural norm. And so we found that kind of fascinating. And I only have a few minutes. I'd love to be able to talk a little bit longer about this, but the long and the short of it is we partnered with a for-profit company called Silver Nest that basically is an online compatibility matching technology that, for lack of a better metaphor, functions a lot like a dating app, but it's for homeowners and housemates and housemates and homeowners. And so people go in and fill out profiles, and then they become matched with people that they're compatible with. There's a secure online portal for people to communicate with one another until they're ready to meet each other. There's free rental agreements. There's background screens that are recommended on the end of both parties. There's also free homeowners and renters insurance available. So we partnered with them, bought up a bunch of their memberships, and started dispersing them to Oregonians for free, and then aggressively pursued an education campaign that basically simply started to educate the public about the benefits of home sharing. And we launched several commercials. We were met with a lot of skepticism initially. People felt like nobody would take anyone into their home, or nobody really does this anymore, or, how do you do this? How do you do that? And so we didn't really know what was going to happen. We knew it was something that was needed. We consider spare bedrooms underutilized housing inventory. And so we launched a couple of commercials and then an aggressive radio buy. And the response was absolutely overwhelming. It was like a tsunami of people reached out to our organization, both homeowners and housemates alike, asking how they could get involved, how they could, basically get assistance in finding a housemate that they felt comfortable with, or finding, a person that they could home share with. I think it's really important to note that what's unique about our organization is that we're really focused on the homeowner. We're focused on educating homeowners about the benefits of home sharing.
Yes. I'm so sorry to interrupt. We really have to wrap this up. We're going till 7. So can you just share with me real quickly, how many folks have you placed in bedrooms? And then we'll post, if you can post something in the chat, and we will share it with a follow-up email. And I'm so sorry that we're just
no, it's totally fine. We have 176 people that have matched across the state. And we're currently working with homeowners down in Lane and Jackson County to get fire victims housed that have lost housing. So I'd love to share more with you. It's homeshareoregon.org. My contact information is there, and I really appreciate the time.
Thank you so
Representative
much.
Reynolds, the reason why it was great to have Tess share is because we focus so much on what we're experiencing on the streets, which is people harming themselves and harming many others on the streets. And we have so many different categories of who needs to be housed. So Tess is looking at a different population, in my opinion. So it's like people like my mother, who at the end of her life organically found a cheap rent in someone's house. But to have a service like that would be really good. And one of the most vulnerable audiences for homelessness at this moment is our elderly population. So bravo to HomeShare for being here. And that's exactly why we need data, because we need to differentiate who is out there and what other differentiated strategies we need, which is why my first call when I got into office outside of the City Hall was to the executive director of the organization, Roseanne Haggerty, because we met at a continuous improvement continuous improvement convention several years ago. And I'll never forget when I went up to her and I said, "Why aren't you working in Portland, Multnomah County?" Now brace yourself, but she just said at that time, they kind of think they have it handled. And so we're really talking about a culture change here. And so being able to partner with people like you, Representative Reynolds, you, Tess, you, Commissioner Meieran, that's the new day that we need here. We need to roll up our sleeves. We need to look at the real truth about what the data is telling us, differentiate it, and then start making smarter strategic investments. There's no one size fit all. There's never going to just be a home for everyone strategy. That worked at one time maybe, but that's not the day that we're in right now. And so I hope that we as a community have been humbled by this, and that we can start to really roll up our sleeves and really lean into each other and just, again, go for it and start getting some, what done.
Wow, I almost want to make that the close of tonight's event, but I do want to allow Commissioner Meieran to not have the last word, but to give some closing thoughts on everything we've talked about today. And I know this is tight. We will be following up with an email and some of the things that we discussed and some other responses to people's concerns that we've seen in the chat. So I'm gonna send it over to Commissioner Sharon Meieran.
I just want to echo the degree of commitment, the statement of need for partnership, for collaborations across sectors, across the river, and throughout our community and at the state level. I think that is going to be the key to moving forward, along with the actual data that we need and a strategy to use that data effectively to drive change. Thanks.
Do you want us to jump in? Are people frozen?
I don't think people are frozen. Representative Reynolds muted.
One thing I want to get in here before we close is workforce issues. And that's something that is really hitting all of us. And so it's a big factor right now. And we're not going to be able to MSW our way out of this. We just won't be able to get that many up and running. So we're going to have to get more creative about who can be working with our houseless. And I'm looking forward to convening some dialogue around that, because we have to get more creative on getting people up enrolled in the workforce. And then we also have to start paying them better so they don't become houseless themselves.
Thank you. We could, great. Thank you all for being here this evening. We will, this ends our discussion for just this evening. We could, as I said, we could go on for hours and hours. I'm grateful for all who came. I had a couple people express disappointment that there wasn't public dialogue, but we were able to ask quite a few questions that were sent to us ahead of time and during tonight's event. So I'll be honest, we're not comfortable with unmuting people who we don't know, because I certainly have been the subject of some pretty inappropriate comments. So just trying to be keeping things in writing and having me do the filtering. So thank you all. Thank you so much, Commissioner Ryan. Thank you for your great team. Thank you, Commissioner Meieran, and your amazing team. Thank you to my great team.
Yes.
It's really an honor to be in this work with you all. And I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you so
now-
much.
And now I have to figure out how to save my chat.
Bye, Representative Reynolds. See you.
Thanks so much. So Maida, can you just tell me real quickly how to save my chat?